For far too long, my garage workshop has had this unorganized pile of plywood and wood scraps taking up space along this wall. So today I'm finally tackling this problem and building a mobile plywood and wood storage cart to organize this space and also get the wood up off the ground. Welcome to Maker Gray. I'm building this project out of one 4x8 sheet of plywood. I used my track saw to break down the sheets into parts, but you can just as effectively use a circular saw and a straight edge. All of the dimensions are in the build plans linked in the description below, which were designed and created by my friend Alma of Pink Soul Studios. I used my table saw for a couple of the cuts, but again, a circular saw could also do the job. The base of this cart is made out of 2x4s, which I easily cut to size with my circular saw. There are 3 side support pieces which need an angle cut on them. I found the angle from the dimensions in the plans and then cut the first board to side. Then I traced the cut onto the next 2 side pieces and cut those as well. And here you can see all of the parts batched out and ready. I want the support pieces to have handles. To do this, I traced 2 circles and then I cut them out with a Forstner bit. I cut through the plywood until my bit barely poked through to the other side, and then I flipped the piece and continued the cut from the back, which helps to reduce blowing out the back of the plywood. Then I drew lines to connect the 2 circles and cut out the center with a jigsaw. And here you can see my super simple handle. I then used my first handle as a template to trace the handle cutout onto the other 2 boards and also cut them out. Before assembly, I need to cut out the pocket holes, which is how I'm going to join all of these boards together. I set up my pocket hole jig, and then I went through each board adding the pocket holes where necessary. I'm going to add large dowels to one side of this cart, which will help organize the wood. Cutting the holes for them now will be easier than when it's all assembled. I lined out a grid where my holes will go, and I'm again using a Forstner bit to cut these holes, which gives a really clean cut. I did my best to drill straight and also not cut all of the way through the plywood to try and eliminate backside tear out. 2 of the holes accidentally went all the way through and blew out the other side, which tore the ply, but that's okay. It's the backside, it's only a couple, we can work with that. And then I finished the cuts from the backside just like I did with the handles. I brought out my cut 2x4s and laid them out to assemble the base. I first used a drill bit and I pre-drilled holes and then screwed 2 boards for each end together. And then added glue to make sure the connection is super strong and pushed everything into place. Keeping these boards in place while I screw everything together is much easier with clamps, and these Bessie trigger clamps made assembly throughout this build so much smoother. I then pre-drilled and screwed the long sides onto the 3 middle supports. The top of this base will be covered with plywood. I took the time to pre-drill with a countersink bit, which carves out an area in the wood, letting the screw head sit slightly below the surface. This way, nothing will snag on these screws in the future. I want this cart to be mobile, so I'm attaching heavy-duty casters to the bottom. I made sure to buy casters with locking wheels so they stay in place when I don't want this cart to move. You can see that this plywood has quite a bit of warp to it, so I'm going to use clamps to force it straight and into place. But first, I clamped Bessie trigger clamps to both ends, which is a great trick to temporarily be braces and hold a vertical piece in place. I made a mark where this board needs to be attached. I set the center of my board on the mark, and then I screwed the center only into place. I then took my trigger clamps and forced both warped ends into place, making the board straight, and then screwed it all down. The support pieces are going to have horizontal dowels connecting them, which means I need a few more holes drilled. The left and center boards need to have holes that are mirrored, so I traced the first board's holes onto the second board and drilled those out. I purposely didn't drill these second holes all the way through, and that ended up being a mistake, so I'll cover that in just a minute. With the end support ready, I added glue for extra strength and then I screwed it into place. Before I can add the center support, I need to cut and insert the horizontal dowels. I added a little glue to keep them secure, and then I twisted them into the holes and into place. And now we're ready for the center support. I added glue, I set it in place, hammered it snug onto the dowels, and then added screws. And then this third support also got glued and screwed into place. So I just put on this third end board, and once I got it on, I realized that I forgot to cut holes for one more horizontal dowel that needs to go right there. But I think I can go ahead and just cut the holes in place. Not ideal, but totally doable. And this is where I should have drilled all the way through earlier, because now I'm having to go back and drill out the rest of that hole and mirror it on the opposite side. It would have been much easier to add the dowel before gluing and screwing the end support into place. At this point, the only option was to push it in from the right side. It took a minute, but it worked. And then finally, I could cut the 9 short dowels to create the right-hand side dividers, attaching them with glue. These dowels are going to be great dividers, helping to add organization to this cart. The last thing to do was to add these last 3 boards, which includes these front 2 horizontal pieces, which I glued and then screwed into place with pocket holes from the back. Ooh, it's like playing Twister. And then I glued and screwed this long board on the back, which will help to hold the plywood sheets in place. And with that, this plywood storage cart was done. Now let's get this pile out of the way so we can load it up. Seeing the wood get reorganized back onto this cart is my favorite part. I'm stoked to have something for my plywood storage needs and storage for the smaller scraps that I have. And I love that the whole body of this cart was built from only 1 sheet of plywood. It's so nice to finally have some organization to this area and some wall space back in my garage. I'm excited to play around with this mobile cart to see where it best fits in the shop, and also now excited to take on some more projects. This cart can also be modified to fit your needs, just like Alma did here by instead adding clamp storage to one side. Don't forget that Alma has created plans for this build linked down below. Please subscribe so you don't miss future projects, and follow me on Instagram so you can see what I'm building next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next project.